Hello and welcome. Welcome to the MBLEx review course. I am your instructor, Jody Scholes, and today we're talking about the upper body, anatomy and movements of the upper body. Since anatomy and physiology is such a big subject, I like to squish together some anatomy and also some movement. So we're going to be talking about the upper body today and getting really specific about where these muscles are and what they do. But first, I want to remind you that our class today will be in three parts. The very first part, I'm going to give you a test-taking strategy because when you went to massage school, you were prepared to do massage. They taught you how to do a great session, but they may not have told you or prepared you for a test. Yeah, they may not have prepared you on how to take the test. So spend a few minutes in the beginning of class giving you some strategy. Part 2 of class is our learning. We're going to go into the anatomy of the upper body. Yeehaw. And then the third part of class is dissecting questions. So we'll be dissecting questions, pulling them apart, um, and getting to the best answer. Because here's another secret of the MBLEx. Sometimes on your MBLEx, the answers are all right. Our job is to dissect the questions and get to the best answer. So we're going to practice that today in part 3 of our class. All right. So in part 1 of class today, I wanted to explain to you that there is a test-taking strategy that has you to understand the nature of the test, the nature of a computer adaptive test. I'm just going to double check. A computer adaptive test is a style of test. And that style of test means that it's adapting. So C.A.T, cat, like meow, a computer adaptive test. What that means in action is you are going to start the MBLEx by logging in and giving them some general information, verifying your name, verifying some personal identification. And by the way, when they ask, you have no experience, okay? You have no experience. You are brand new. So we want to keep that playing field as even as possible. Your first few questions on the MBLEx will be fairly random and they will be of moderate difficulty. So if we say that on a scale of 1 to 10, that 1 is an easy question and 10 is a hard question, then you'll be at a 4 or a 5 on the degree of difficulty when you first start the MBLEx. And so you may feel like, whoa, hey, I know this answer. Good, that's great. When you answer those first few questions correctly, the test will recognize that you are succeeding. And your next few questions will be a little bit more difficult. So if you've had colleagues from massage school tell you, oh my gosh, I think the test got harder. It did. It did. We know this. And you're like, oh, that's so unfair. Oh my God, how can they do that? Make it harder. It's okay. Because as you get harder questions, degree of difficulty is increasing. What that means is those questions are worth more points. Yes, your goal is to score 630 points on the MBLEx. That's out of 900 possible points, you're going to score 630. Yeah. And so those more difficult questions give you more points. So here's the good news. If it seems like the questions are getting harder, you're doing well. Yeah. So, and at the same time, stay calm if the questions seem like they're getting easier. There may be some subjects that will give you a little bit of an easier question, throwing you a meatball, giving you the opportunity to gain some momentum. So when I say throwing you a meatball, what that means is giving you an easier question to help with your initial process of getting rolling. So stay calm with the easy questions. Stay calm during the more difficult questions. This test, it's kind of like riding a bucking bronco. Like riding the mechanical bull. It's like, whoa, boy, that was a different one. Okay, that's a little bit easier, a little bit easier. Whoa, there's a hard one. We can anticipate this. We can plan for it in our studying, but mostly we can plan for this in our mental preparation. A big part, a major part of being successful with the MBLEx is managing your mental state. By telling you and explaining to you about a computer adaptive test, this helps you to stay calm in your mental state. This helps you to come back to the present moment. When we leapfrog out to 2 hours from now and say, oh my gosh, I gotta pass this. Uh. That anxious can stay outside the door. You can invite that anxiety, invite that nervousness, invite that tension right outside the door. Say thank you, but not right now. Come back to that present moment using the breath. We talk about the breath quite a bit. It's a great way to get back to the present moment. And remember, the questions you're getting are normal. The questions you're getting are meant for you. The computer adaptive test, the MBLEx, it does get a little harder, but it's meant to. On your path to being successful at taking the test. It's a part of being successful taking the test. So that is the computer adaptive test. It's the style of the massage and bodywork licensing exam. Part 2 of class, time to get into our learning. Ready for some upper body anatomy? Ew. It's good. It really is good. It's a heavy subject. Here we go. Anatomy of the upper body. And I wanted to give credit to Dr. Sunil for a few of the slides. I've borrowed them from SlideShare and wanted to just give credit for the source. Part of our best practices as ethical massage therapists. And also thank you to some of these people from these universities who share a lot of their images through an app called SlideShare. We're getting right into it. Studying the muscles of the neck can be completely overwhelming. I can't tell you how many of you guys have told me that it's a little overwhelming to even figure out what to study. In fact, that's a big reason that you're here, is to figure out what to study. So let's take a look at the most important muscles of the neck. This again is a review of what you'll need to know for the MBLEx. In massage school, you probably spent a lot of time on this, but let's look at the major muscles that you'll need to know for the MBLEx. A biggie, you guys. SCM. I hope that this one looks familiar. This is the muscle that when you turn your neck, pops out right here. The sternocleidomastoid muscle. You can see here that it attaches right behind the ear. This white stuff represents the tendon and the fascia. This is the muscle. Muscles attached to bones via tendons. And you can see where this muscle runs from behind the ear right down to the sternum, to the sternoclavicular joint. Got one more picture of this here. So in looking at origins and insertions, I've mentioned before, I'm not a stickler about origins and insertions. However, one thing that is interesting is that the muscle moves in the direction of the origin. So when we turn our head to the left, that left SCM is contracting and pulling our head into quasi-rotation. It really does this movement, makes us look up. But when a muscle moves, it contracts, it shortens. And so the SCM is responsible to turn the head kind of like in this direction and in the opposite direction. Yes, SCM. It's one of the biggies. It's a lovely muscle to massage. Typically, when we massage it, we're doing something called milking it. And if you haven't done that in a while, you may want to practice on your next practice person because it can actually feel a little bit, the client can feel a little bit like they're choking or like we're poking them in the throat, in the esophagus or the trachea, right? So you may want to practice, even practice on yourself, just milking that muscle, getting a real sense of where it goes, feeling behind the ear where it's going. So following it straight up behind the ear, there's a nice tender point in there. This is your SCM. On the MBLEx, sternocleidomastoid. That big word right here. It's a major muscle of the neck. And these are the ones we're going to be studying today. Another big one that you may not have gotten in massage school, but this muscle is specifically responsible for depressing the jaw. So the mandible, the platysma muscle, this big platysma muscle, is responsible for depressing the jaw, the mandible. When it contracts, you can just see here, when it contracts, it depresses the jaw, the platysma muscle. Makes me think of a platypus. Kind of looks like a platypus's tail, right? Platypus is kind of like a beaver, has a big flat tail. It's a big flat muscle. Yeah, good. So this is the origin is actually this deeper fascia of the thorax, our chest cavity, sometimes called the thorax. It's a thorax, the thoracic spine, the thorax is the entire trunk of the body. And then it comes in here. And remember I mentioned that the muscle will move in the direction of the origin. So our origin is actually down here. So when this muscle contracts, it shortens and pulls the mandible towards the origin. That's really the only reason we care about the origin. Yeah, we want to work it as far as massage, but we want to know, by knowing where the origin is, we know the direction that that muscle is pulling. Or more, an easier way to look at that is what direction is the movement? It's in the direction of the origin. So if you get a question about origin, which you probably won't, those questions are going away. The origin insertion questions, you're like, what muscle originates at the upper part of the thorax? You're not going to get an anatomy question like that. You're going to get it in the mix of movement. So what movement moves the mandible? What muscle moves the mandible into depression? Make sense? Good. Here's another big look at it. And again, please save yourself some time and some trouble. Don't worry about the innervation of the muscle. Yeah, you're not becoming a chiropractor. You're not becoming a physical therapist. Yes, in massage school, you may have covered it, but we're not going to cloud our brain with all the innervations of the muscles. Okay, there are a few pathologies that involve nerve entrapment, then we'll learn the nerves when it impacts a pathology. Okay. Oh, here's one that you love, right? The trapezius. Yes. So, origin and insertion, you can see here. Um, so origin is up top. Yeah, nuchal line, occipital protuberance. So the occipital ridge protuberance just means a bony landmark. So the origin is the top of the muscle, right up in here. Because one of the actions of that muscle, the trapezius, is it extends the neck. Go ahead and extend your neck. I'm not going to demonstrate for a second. Extend your neck. We've got flexion and extension. You know these. Extend your neck. Yes. So extension of the neck. Good. Good. So you can see the other movements. One of the other things I'd like you to know is that the upper fibers of the trapezius elevate the shoulders. So the upper fibers elevate the shoulders. Excellent. And you can see the insertion points here. We'll take another look at this a little closer. Here's that yummy trapezius that we all love to work. And this is just half of it. I do want to point out, though, that one of the insertion points is on the spine of the scapula. So take a peek at this right here. This is the whole scapula, shoulder blade. Here's that bony part that sticks out, the spine of the scapula. And the trap inserts into, attaches to the spine of the scapula. That's why it can elevate the scapula. Makes sense, right? And remember too, we love this spine of the scapula because it tells us where the rotator cuffs are hiding. We've got a little infraspinatus here, a little supraspinatus above, supra, above the spine of the scap, infra, tucked in under the scap. Yeah, under the spine of the scalp, right? Excellent. And while we're here on this image, I want you to also notice the latissimus dorsi. Nice big back muscle. You're seeing half of it here. The lat muscle. This is that nice fascia that attaches the lat muscle to the spine. The lat muscle, the fascia, and the tendons that attach it to the spine. Now we're going to pause here for just a moment because I noticed that a special guest that is here by invitation has arrived. And so I'm going to pause this share for just a moment and we'll come back to it. Juvie, you can make a note of that too. And if Diana is in a position to say hello, I would love for Diana to say hello. Let me go to our
Hello.
speaker view so you can see her. Hey, Diana, how are you? Oh, you know what? You hit the mic. You hit the mute button. Sorry. Or somebody hit the mute button.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Hi, everyone. Hi, Jody.
Hello, honey.
Sorry I'm late.
Oh, thank you for your note saying that you were doing job interviews.
Yeah.
I know. I
Yeah.
know. So, I believe you might have some news for us.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I finally passed my exam. What is it? 2, 3 months, 3 weeks ago? I think it was
Yeah,
three
we've been
weeks ago.
waiting for
two
two
weeks
weeks
ago.
for
Yeah.
your license. Yeah.
I've been waiting for my license. I finally got it this last week. Finally. But yeah, this journey, oh my gosh. Let me tell you, guys, don't give up because the day I took my exam, and I'm probably gonna start crying. So the day I took my exam, I was like, if I don't do this, that's it. I'm done. And I went in, I studied that whole week. I studied really, really, really hard. Um, and I went in and I said, I'm not giving up, but if I don't do this, that's it. I'm done with massage. I was at that point because, I went to school back in 2001. I had my Florida license. And then when I moved to Pennsylvania, it was very difficult because I let my license expire. So, um,
And you also have been working in the industry, but in a different role, right?
Yes, I'm also an esthetician.
Yeah.
Um, so I've been, trying to like get all of that. And then there's so much stuff that happened. My son went to college and oh my gosh, it was just a lot of stuff going on. And but I didn't give up. And I took the exam like 4 times. And within those 4 times, I'm like, every time I had to pay the $300, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta do this again. I gotta do this again. And this last time I tried to reschedule the exam and they told me no. And I'm like, okay, so we got to get this done. And I'm the type of person like I can't study like weeks in advance and then take the exam like that one week. I'm like that person like I got to cram. I got to study that week, the day of, the day before. And that's what I did. But I did tell myself the day before, Diana, if you don't do this, I'm just gonna hang the jacket up because at that point I was like done, you know. But I went in, I prayed so hard, and I studied. Even the day of the exam, I met with Jody, and we spoke. And I was like, while I was talking to her, I was doing practice exams in the morning of my exam, just going back and forth, back and forth. And when I got there and I took the exam and I was like doing all the questions and before I hit submit, I said, okay, I'm gonna have to pay this $300 again. Cause at that point I'm like, oh God. Cause at one point I was just guessing at one point. I was like, no way. And then when I saw congratulations on the screen, I literally screamed out in the whole place. Even though I had a private room, which I requested, I I have test anxiety. So I requested that private room and that extra time, which I actually did use all my time a little bit. I had like 30 minutes left. And uh I screamed out. The guy came in and he said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Can you read that screen? Like, just read it for me, like two, 3 times." He's like, "Yeah, you passed." And I was like, "No, can you read it again?" And he was like, "You passed." And I was just like standing there crying, and I was like speechless. I like up to now, like it's like so surreal. Like I still can't believe that I saw that. Like and getting my license last week, it was just like, oh my gosh. So yeah. So my thing with you guys is like just don't stop studying. Like all the classes that everything that Jody has on the Patron, I every day I was re listening to those videos over and over and over and over. And every day I took two of the videos. I did one half the day and the other half the day. And then I asked Jody, like every minute, Even when I told you that one week when I said, "Hey, Jody, my life is a little bit normal. My test is on the 27th," and she was like, I could see her face through the email, like, "What? Is she crazy?" Because it was literally one week, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna get it done."
You know,
And
and we get, what you're talking about, Diana. I just want to kind of frame it is perseverance
yeah,
in the
yeah,
biggest way,
yeah,
in spite of self-doubt, in spite
yeah,
of the challenges. And
yeah.
now you are a dual licensed.
I am a dual therapist. I'm so happy. Now it's on to my next adventure. You might think it's not working, but please don't give up. Like I was going to give up and I didn't. So it's gonna work. I'm telling you. Just listen to the classes, to the videos over and over, and just do the practice test over and over and over. Everything that Jody has on there, you'll see it on the exam. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for making time today. I know you're in between
Yeah,
interviews, which
yeah,
is
I
just so
am.
fun. It's so cool,
I know.
Uh, and and just it's normal. I mean, what I'm hearing, and what I'm reflecting back for Diana is that it's normal to have self-doubt
Yes.
at times.
Yeah. This is the last time I'm spending $265, because that was a lot of money when I calculated. I was like, damn, girl,
Now it's time to start
so,
earning it back,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I work
Yeah.
in hand and stone. So now it's just a transition, to become a dual and for them to put me on the schedule as a dual. Yeah.
So exciting. Oh,
Yeah.
and yet it's been a couple of weeks, but you know what? It took a couple of weeks to get your license. It took almost 3 weeks.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
Pennsylvania I think this is the transition from what everyone was telling me. This is that transition for renewal. So it took a little while. But let me tell you, I email them every day, like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they probably said, "You know what? This girl is a little cray cray. Let me
let's
get her
get,
out of the way."
let's get her license done.
Yeah, so because I email them every single day, like I need my license, I need my license number at least for my insurance. So I was able to get it really. I mean, everyone said that was quick because usually Pennsylvania it's like 3 weeks, almost to a month.
Well, and
Yeah,
also, I want to point out that you are proactive.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is something else that we take away from this class is that you're taking personal responsibility
yeah,
to follow up.
yeah,
To say, okay, what's happening with my application? That's taking personal responsibility versus being kind of the, oh, poor me, you know,
yeah,
the victim. No,
right,
look, there's
yeah,
there's a moment for poor me, but then it's
yeah.
like kind of get up, get going, and let's figure out what's going on with this license,
Uh, 10, 15 years ago when I took the test, it was 50 questions. It was very easy. And
right?
now it's like, what am I seeing here?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And did
So,
you say you graduated in 2001?
yep, 2001. Yep.
Just
And
saying, here we are.
yep,
Here we are.
2001. Yep. Um, the only thing is if I move to another state, I don't know. We will have to talk about that, like what happens to we'll
And I was
figure that
just going
out.
to mention that part of being a member of this community
Yeah.
is that our team, me and the team,
Mm-hmm.
so
Okay.
when you're done, or if you decide, okay, hey, I'd like to be licensed in Florida,
Yeah.
we can help you with that.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
every state is different.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we have experience, and I'm bringing people onto the team who have experience getting a massage license in every state,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
any state. And
Yeah.
so yeah, as this community has grown, as we've navigated these waters, Diana, like you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about,
Yeah.
um, I know now that beyond passing the MBLEx,
Yeah.
that there's still
There's
some
a lot
support
more.
needed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
never leaving this community.
Well, in
And
our
I'm staying for
CEs,
good.
I love it. I love it. We'll keep you for good. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But just to let everyone know, like, we all go through so much in life. And it's like, we like I know for me, I'm speaking from my experience that there's so much as a single parent, just dealing with a lot of issues. My son is finally off to college, but still working two jobs. Now I'm actually applying for another job. I'm going to work three jobs just to keep myself busy. But just don't give up. Like I feel like when you um when you're passionate about something, you have to put the passion in it. Like you really have to like be passionate of like listening to the videos and be passionate about like the name of the muscle and the name of the what's happening. Like there's so many. I remember talking to Jody once and she was explaining to me I think it was protraction and retraction. And it was just so funny because I didn't even know what protraction and retraction was like from so long ago. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know that's what it was. So, and also having the one-on-one with Jody really does help as well. So all of that really, really, yes, Vanessa. Yeah, all of everything that Jody's teaching and the one-on-ones that I've had with her, it all helped. It helped me so, 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 so much. And I would never, never, never be ungrateful or like, I mean, I would reach out to Jody like almost every day still, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you because I hold the space for
Yeah,
you and for this entire community
yeah,
and
yeah,
hold that space of knowing that your success is imminent, is now, is just around the corner. And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
and then those times where it's hard for you to hold that space for yourself or believe in yourself, I'm here. The
Yes.
team is here to be
You
like, yeah,
definitely was. You definitely there still. Thank you
awesome.
so much. Thank you so
But
much. And good luck, guys. Good luck.
yeah, and we'll
Yeah.
see you again, I'm
All
sure.
right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Ciao,
Thanks,
Vanessa.
Miss V. All right. Bye.
Yeah. Bye, Diana. Awesome. Well, and just a little word of encouragement for someone who's been recently successful passing the MBLEx. Wanted to share that with you guys. All right, back to the regularly scheduled program, upper body anatomy. Here we are. We had just looked at the trapezius, and now we looked at the latissimus. Let's take a look at some upper posterior muscles. Splenus capitis. We got splenus capitis and splenus cervicus that are up in this region. Cervical cap hits the occipital ridge. Just like the back of your cap, if you put on a baseball cap, it hits your occipital ridge, the occipital bone right here. This is splenus capitis. And it's also, like the trapezius, responsible for extension of the neck. Doesn't that make sense? Look where it is. It's going to shorten. It's going to bring that occipital bone back. It's going to bring the whole cranium back into extension. Here's that look at the cervicus. So the capitis touches the cap, touches the cranium. Cervicus comes in here. It ends at the transverse processes. It doesn't actually get quite all the way to the occipital ridge. But very popular muscles when you're massaging, but you may not realize that you're doing splenus capitis and splenus cervicus when you're back here. Just want you to see where they are. Another splenus capitis. There's two of them, right? Bilateral on both accounts. So there's two splenus cervicus, two splenus capitis. Here's what splenus capitis, cap, baseball cap. Hope you understand what I'm saying. A baseball cap would come right across here if you were to put it on and pull it down. Here's a beautiful look at the sutures, S-U-C, sutures of the skull. Sutures of the skull is where these bones have fused. Up here was the soft spot when you were born, little soft spot. But then over the first 2 to 3 years, these sutures got nice and hard. Sutures of the skull. Considered immobile joints, We talk a lot about joints. We talked about joints when we talked about exploring navigating the body recently. And we think of shoulders and hips and knees and fingers and toes and vertebrae. Those are all movable joints. They're all synovial joints, movable joints. But we do have some joints that move a little bit or don't move. And the sutures are joints that are considered immobile joints. Yeah, here. All right. Ooh, levator scap, one of my faves. Okay, so you can see here the levator scap. We'll see another picture of this momentarily, but all those other muscles have been pulled away, and you can see clearly the levator scap. So transverse process, these little things here on the outside, these little bones here on the outside are called the transverse process, compared to these little bones on the vertebrae called the spinous process. So the levator inserts into the transverse process, inserts right in there. Excuse me, its origin is right there. Comes down and it attaches here to the medial border of the scalp. Right at the very top of that medial border of the scalp, which is why the name, I love this muscle because the name actually says what it does. The levator, the levator, elevator of the scapula. Yeah, that's its major function. Moving along to other muscles of the upper body in the back, in the posterior compartment. Let's take a look at the rhomboids. Right in here. We got rhomboid minor, which just means it's up top. Rhomboid major. And Diana was talking about retraction of the scapula. So if you were to put your arms out like you're Frankenstein or like you're a zombie, right? And bend your elbows, bringing your shoulder blades together toward the spine. This is called retraction of the scapulas. And the muscles that are doing that, the major muscle is the rhomboids. So, zombie apocalypse. Yep. Bring those back. Bring those two borders of the scapula toward the spine. Squish them together. Imagine you've got a walnut back there and you're going to crack the walnut with your scapulas. See if you can squish them. That's retraction of the scapulas. And that is what movement, the major movement of the rhomboids. Got another picture here of the levator scap. Good. Nice picture here too of the scapula. A beautiful picture of the spine of the scapula on both sides. Let's pause here for a moment and look at the superior angle of the scalp. Because there's different angles of the scalp, and the rhomboids here are inserting into the medial aspect. And this edge of the scapula is considered the medial part of the scapula because, as you know, medial means closest to the spine. We normally think about that in terms of the anterior. It also holds true in the posterior. So this angle right here is the medial border. Top, superior, and the superior part of the scapula, that's where the levator inserts, right? We're going to elevate, so it has to be on the superior angle. And just to point out here, all the way over here, this is considered the lateral border. Yeah, all sorts of different angles to that. And so if you have a question on the MBLEx about the angles of the scalp, just pause and remember Medial is closest to the spine. Lateral is away from the spine. Good. Because, all right. And so we've got some scalene muscles. We've talked about these bad boys. You may remember them from massage school. We've got three scalene sections. We've got the anterior, the middle, and the posterior. They're on the side of the neck. Here's another look at them. Anterior is in the front. Medial is shown here. So you can see where it's just where they attach. A little bit forward, a little bit middle. We'll see the posterior here too. All right. All sorts of fun angles here. And to be honest, I'm not worried about any face muscles. Do your best. If they're asking you about muscles of the face, pull the words apart. Okay? Pull those words apart and see if you can figure out depressor, elevator, flexor, extender. This is what you're learning. This is what you're relearning. When you pull those words apart, you get clues as to the region of the body you're in and the movement of that muscle. But we need to be patient with ourselves and give you a chance to just dissect the word. Look here, anterior scalene, you know it's in the front. Middle scalene, it's going to be in between. Good. Let's move away from the muscles of the neck and let's take a look and the muscles, some of the muscles of the back, and let's take a look at the arm. So as a reminder, the long bone of the arm, the humerus, the shoulder joint, technically the glenohumeral joint, glenoid cavity, head of the humerus, proximal head of the humerus, right? Good. Now we go down to the distal end of the humerus, where it articulates with the radius and the ulna. As a reminder, my little learning tool, the ulna is a smaller word, is a little word compared to the word radius. Ulna is the shorter word, the smaller word. This is called our pinky finger, our little finger, right? So ulna is always on the pinky side. Little finger, little word gives us radius on the thumb side. Right, so typically we're in anatomical position. And so remember, if you're asked questions about the forearm, if you're asked questions about the radius and ulna, start from anatomical position. This is especially important of the movements of supination and pronation. So from anatomical position, supination puts the palm down. Pronation puts the palm up. Technically, we're in neutral position from anatomical position. As a reminder, we've got carpal bones, we've got metacarpal bones, and we have phalanges. Now, I mentioned this earlier, that normally when we think of the scapula, we think in this point, like we're imagining in our mind, we're seeing a body from the posterior. But remember, those scapulas play a role in some of the anterior stuff as well. It's part of the scapula that makes up the shoulder girdle, the shoulder joint. This is that scapula. And let's look at it from, we've looked at this a number of times, but this is the anterior view. So this is the posterior view of the scapula, the one we kind of think of when we think of scaps. But this is the anterior view. And the reason I mention this, so if we're looking at a skeleton like this this is technically, see this little angle right here? That's the glenoid cavity. Is this, in your opinion, is this a scapula from the right side of the body or the left side of the body? Can you determine? One of the easiest ways to determine that is by this angle right here. If this is a left scap or a right scap. I see some answers. Some answers coming in. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. You are correct. It is the right scapula because this would be the right shoulder. Just like this guy right here, this little skeleton. This is what we're looking at. This little angle right here. If we removed the rib cage, why do we care? Because this part of the scapula is considered anterior, even though it's under, and that's where the subscapularis lives, right? It's considered the anterior part of the scapula. So just be careful. This angle here is the posterior view of the scapula. This is the anterior view. And if you've got questions about that, just hit me up after class and we can go over it again because it can be a little fuzzy. But I wanted to point out those two views. Before we move into the lower arm, I mentioned the radius and the ulna. Depending on the body, the radius and the ulna are about the same length, but the ulna definitely gets the rap of being a little bit smaller. Yeah. It is a little word, and it is next to the little finger, but the radius and ulna are about the same size, but the ulna is just a little skinnier in the shaft of the bone. Good. On this arm, we've got some muscles. I feel like I'm singing Old MacDonald. On this arm, we've got some muscles. E-I-E-I-O. Yeah, and so we've got a bicep and a tricep. So the bicep, right? Bicep. When the bicep contracts, when that bicep contracts, it shortens. When the tricep contracts, it shortens. When the bicep contracts, it flexes. It flexes at the elbow. When the tricep flexes, the bicep relaxes, the tricep flexes, and it extends the elbow. We are not extending the arm, my friends, right? We're talking about a specific joint. When we identify movement, we have to know the joint. If we're talking about just extension of the arm or flexion of the arm, we're normally talking about the glenohumeral joint. We have to be very specific if we're talking about the elbow, the wrist, or the shoulder. The glenohumeral joint, the elbow, or the wrist. Another muscle of our upper arm is the deltoid. It has three parts: anterior, medial, and posterior. You can see how it sits: anterior, posterior, and medial. The major movement of the deltoid muscle is that it abducts the arm. Abducts the arm. Anterior fibers flexes the arm. Flexes the arm straight out in front of me. Posterior fibers extend the arm. Anterior fibers help to medially rotate. Now, if you've got questions about medial and lateral rotation of the humerus, let's dig down on that a little bit more, okay? Because it is a subtle movement. Normally, we see that internal or medial rotation. We'll do this over here since there's light. Head of the humerus right here, medially rotating, turning in. So my arm is turning in, medially rotating the head of the humerus. So the concentration here is on the head of the humerus, that distal end, excuse me, not distal, proximal end, up here, proximal end of the humerus. Good. This is abduction of the glenohumeral joint, so abduction of the shoulder joint. And actually, this movement is initiated by a rotator cuff, by the supraspinatus. But then the anterior deltoid kicks right, the medial and anterior deltoid kicks right in. And after about 90 degrees, we get all that little help going on. The trap, serratus anterior. Yeah, here's a bigger picture of it. Supraspinatus starts the movement. All heads of the deltoid support the movement, supports the shoulder in that movement. And then after 90 degrees, so we start to, from anatomical position, abduct. Oop, here I am at 90 degrees. Now the biceps kick in, the trap kicks in, serratus anterior stabilizes, and that is abduction of the glenohumeral joint. Abduction of the humerus. There we go. Now, the opposite movement. What adducts the arm? As you may have guessed, the lat, the pec major, and the teres major. So that big old nice lat muscle that attaches right here, the lat actually attaches right over here. So on the back, it's the lat. On the front, it's the pec major to help to stabilize that arm coming back down. If you've been to the gym and you've done the lat machine, right? The lat machine activates your lats. And then technically, it's bringing that humerus into adduction. Final part of our anatomy for today is the forearm muscles. We're not going to get specific about, oh, this is named the carpi radialis, the palmaris longus. What I'd like you to know is that there are flexors of the forearm and extensors of the forearm. So anatomical position, running out of room, anatomical position, flexors of the forearm, extensors. Nice stretch if you haven't done it lately. Extensors of the forearm. So flexors of the forearm, flexing those muscles. Extensors of the forearm. These are a look at the flexors. And here's the good news. Most of the muscles are called flexor something. Flexor muscles are in the forearm. When you see radialis, palm, you know you're in the forearm. Here are the extensors of the forearm. Look at extensor, 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 right? Brachioradialis is in there, but it's a little one. This is brachioradialis. But so again, extensor is in the name. Extension of the forearm is a movement of the wrist. Home stretch, we've talked about the lat. We'll see it again. It inserts also along that iliac crest, but we're focused on the upper body today. As we move into that pelvis, that's the lower body. One other muscle we've mentioned a couple of times, that's serratus anterior. This is also known as the boxer's muscle because when we throw a punch, that serratus anterior is moving that scapula forward. It's also called protraction of the scapula. So remember we did retraction in the zombie? Now we do protraction as a boxer. That scapula moves forward on the rib cage. Protraction of the scapula. And while we're here looking at the serratus anterior, such a nice picture, right? Let's just take a quick look at the rib cage because I want to remind you we've got some true ribs and some false ribs. Here's the upper body anatomy of the thorax or the rib cage. So true ribs attach to the sternum. Notice there are three parts of the sternum. These three parts have little joints that are semi-movable. Now, when we talk about joints, remember we mentioned earlier, most of the time we think of joints as freely movable, right? Freely movable. But we looked at the sutures of the skull as joints without movement. The sternum are joints with a little bit of movement. Upper body, joints with a little bit of movement. So when we breathe, there's a little bit of movement in between those three parts of the sternum. So true ribs attach to the sternum directly. False ribs, 8, 9, 10, false ribs, 8, 9, and 10, attach indirectly. They're still attaching, but they're attached to, like they're part of the cage. They're part of the rib cage. Unlike the floaters, right? The floaters are down here, 11 and 12. 11 and 12, they're not attached to anything. They're floaters. So these false ribs have what they call a cartilage cap. This white stuff is cartilage, and it's capped to make it more rigid and to be a part of the cage. But the false ribs technically don't touch the sternum. 1 through 7 touch the sternum. 8, 9, and 10 false, but with the cartilage cap. So they're part of the cage. But then 11 and 12 are floaters. Yeah. Nice, huh? Nice review. And one muscle that we've mentioned briefly, but I wanted to show you was the pectoralis major. This nice big major muscle. It originates here on the sternum, and it inserts into a little area called the bicipital groove. But that's why the pectoralis, so again, we move towards the origin of the muscle. Movement is towards the origin of the muscle. That's why the pectoralis major is responsible for horizontal adduction. So adduction of the arms in the horizontal plane, adduction of the humerus in the horizontal plane. Pec major. Last 3 slides here before we move into dissecting questions. Thanks for hanging in there today. Rectus abdominis. Now, we also have a rectus femoris, right? That is someone back in the vague part of your memory, rectus femoris. Rectus abdominis, here in the upper body, is our abs. It's that six-pack. When we think about a six-pack abs, that would be the rectus abdominis. Rectus femur, rectus femoris, lower body, a rectus muscle on the femur. Yeah, one of our quads, actually. Yes. So rectus abdominis, be careful. Are you being asked about rectus abdominis or rectus femoris? Two very different parts of the body. And since we're talking about the rectus abdominis has bilateral movement when we do a crunch. Bicycle, bicentennial, two, bilateral. Both sides are contracting. You can see this healthy fella is doing a bicycle sit-up or a crunch, right? That's both sides of the rectus abdominis contracting versus the unilateral movement, unicycle, unicorn, una. One side is contracting. This is also the obliques, but the rectus abdominis is in there. One side is contracting, so it's unilateral movement, one-sided movement. Sometimes you'll see that question on the MBLEx asking which muscle, which movement is bilateral, which movement is unilateral. Unilateral is only one side. So since we're talking about upper body, this is a contraction, a unilateral movement, but also lateral flexion of the neck is considered a unilateral movement, one side. Flexion of the neck, a bilateral movement. Two muscles are contracting to make that happen. Another example of bilateral versus unilateral movement. All right, how you doing? It is time. It is time to dissect some questions. We got a light load on the questions today, so we only have a few. Um, and then after our questions, I'll stay on and answer some of your individual questions. But let's get in there and apply what we've just learned, shall we? This is part 3 of class, applying what you've learned to dissecting questions. It's time. The group of muscles that best describes the movement of abduction at the shoulder joint are A, deltoid, all heads, pec minor, and teres minor as a helper. B, supraspinatus starts the movement, deltoid, biceps as a helper. C, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscap. D, pec major, latissimus dorsi, teres major. The group of muscles that best describes the movement of abduction at the shoulder joint are blank. I see some answers coming in the chat. Okay, best practices. Let's get rid of one wrong answer. You know there's one wrong answer in there, and I think it's not letter C. Letter C you might recognize, but you recognize it because it's the SITS muscles, the rotator cuff muscles. All right, let's take a look at the chat, see what we got. Ooh, answers coming in. All right, let's see. Oh, Diane got it. Good. Diane T. Mayor nailed it. Brienne got it. Good. Maya, yeah. Ms. V nailed it. Marcia, yep. Good, good, good. Brenda, you got it. Ooh, Kiara got it. Ooh, we got a little. Remember, we're looking at abduction. What is abduction? Go into anatomical position. What's abduction of the arms? Careful, careful, right? Look, look, look. All right. Best answer? Boom. Letter B. Abduction at the shoulder joint. Abduction. Yeah. All right. Super starts the movement. Deltoid biceps as a helper. Good job. Good job. Those of you who picked letter D, you were close. Adduction. Adduction at the glenohumeral joint. Awesome. Next question. Oh, there's a picture. There we go. When your client hits the heavy bag, she feels tension under her armpit. There's a tightness, no pain, but a little restriction. What muscle would you want to work? What muscle could potentially be involved? A, pectoralis. B, rhomboid major. C, deltoid. D, serratus anterior. When your client hits the heavy bag, she feels tension under her armpit. There's tightness. No pain, but a little restriction. What muscle would potentially be involved? All right, let's get rid of one wrong answer before we look into the chat. One wrong answer, not rhomboid, right? Remember, rhomboid that's our retraction. Yeah, if you're gonna hit the heavy bag, you gotta pull your arm back. But there's not gonna be tension from the rhomboid. There's not gonna be tension in the armpit. Okay, let's look in the chat, see what we got. Ooh, lots of answers. Love it. Sharita nailed it. Kara nailed it. Brenda got it. You are correct, Vanessa. Yes. Maria's in. Roxanne, you're in. Diane, yes. Diane, yes. Diane D. Diane T. Hi, Diane D. Marcia, you got it. Ms. V nailed it. Candace, you're on it. CJ, good, good, good. All right, Kara, yep. Maya, Brienne, nailed it. Good, 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 good. All right, best answer, bang. Serratus anterior. Do you remember? It's called the boxer muscle here along the rib cage. Yeah, and up into the armpit. We also look at subscap when it comes to axillary region, but in this case, hitting the heavy bag, serratus anterior. Next question. What ribs are considered false ribs? A, 10, 11, and 12. B, 8 through 10. C, 1 and 2. D, 7 through 12. We talked about this. We did. What ribs are considered false ribs? Let's get rid of one wrong answer. We can just eliminate 7 through 12 because that includes some ribs that you know are not false. They're not called false anyhow. All right, let's look at our, ooh, we got lots. Ms. V, yes. Diane, Brenda, Jennifer, Vanessa. Ooh, yep, 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 exactly. CJ, caught yourself, didn't you? Good. Roxanne, nailed it. Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. Diane, D. Ooh, think again, think again. Sharita, you're in. Mm, 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 mm. Kira got it. Yep. Candace got it. Vanessa got it. All right, all right, all right. Oh, one more person down here. Oh, close, close, but no cigar. False ribs. Gonna give you a little clue. False ribs are not the floaters. Not the floaters. False ribs are 8 through 10. 11 and 10, 11 and 12, they float. They're not considered false. The false ribs have the costal cap. They don't directly attach to the sternum. So 8 through 10. I know, horrible question, right? That's why we go over it. Final question, final question. What best describes the movement of a sit-up? What best describes the movement of a sit-up? Unilateral of the rectus abdominis. Bilateral of the rectus abdominis. Unilateral of the obliques. Bilateral of the obliques. What best describes the movement of a sit-up? We're going to get rid of one wrong answer. You can't bilateral the obliques. It's trying to like bilateral lateral flexion. So you can't bilateral the obliques. Let's see what we got. I'm telling you, there's two right answers here, but there's one best answer. Woo! Vanessa nailed it. Ms. V, yep. Candace got it. Brenda got it. Maria got it. Sharita, Brienne, Marcia, yes. Diane, yes. Good. CJ, yep. Maya, yep. Did I say Kira? Yep, you got it. Vanessa, Marcia, yes. Yes, yes, yes. And right, right. We'll comment about that. Rereading. Yes. Good. Good, good, good. Best answer? Bilateral of rectus abdominis. Now, we did see two pictures, right? The best answer here is bilateral of the rectus because of a traditional sit-up. But you could consider that unilateral movement also a sit-up. But in this case, The picture we saw, the bilateral movement of the sit-up, of the rectus abdominis. Yay! That's a wrap. That's a wrap on our learning and our dissecting questions for today. Congratulations! Woo-hoo! You did it! How you feeling? There's a lot of information there, huh? Yeah, a lot of information. Exactly. So good work today. And we're recording this class so you can go back and you can review that class. We went through some of that material pretty quickly because we had a lot of it. Yeah, but here we are. Excellent work today. I'm going to stay on for another 15 minutes after the recording has ended to answer any specific questions you may have. But signing off for now, reminding you that my name is Jody Scholes. I'm your instructor for the MBLEx review class. We meet here every week, live in class. Happy to have you and happy to see you again real soon. Bye for now.